Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Triple N Media. I am Dr. NIK NIKAM, and this is COVID-19 World News. The feature presentation is vitamin D and COVID-19 infection. Is there any relationship or not? Before we proceed any further, I would like you to take a look at my COVID-19 pandemic, an international guide available on Amazon.com. You can also check out my other publications. So let's jump right into the relationship between vitamin D and COVID-19 infection, if there is any. One of the studies involving 489 patients found those with low vitamin D levels were more likely to test positive for the coronavirus than people with normal vitamin D levels. Well, I think the important point is majority of the adults have vitamin D deficiency. So if you routinely check vitamin D levels in patients with COVID infection, and if they have low vitamin D levels, you can make a case to give them vitamin D in the early stages of the disease. Anyway, COVID-19 patients with low vitamin D levels were also found to have more pulmonary complications. And in those patients who received vitamin D in the early stages, their pulmonary complications were less complicated compared to those who did not receive vitamin D levels. These are all based on real small studies involving like 50 patients or so, but there is an indirect correlation between vitamin D level and COVID infection based on certain studies. However, randomized clinical studies using high-dose vitamin D in patients with low vitamin D levels and critical illnesses showed no difference in outcomes. That is, they took a group of people, these are randomized trials, a group of people with low vitamin D levels and critical illness, and they were given high doses of vitamin D in one group, and the placebo group did not receive the vitamin D levels, and the outcomes were actually not different. So based on this study, they concluded that vitamin D level, vitamin D supplements does not alter the course of a severely ill patient. Based on that, we need more clinically randomized studies to look at the relationship between vitamin D levels, vitamin D administration, and the severity of COVID-19 infection in patients with COVID positive tests. But let's look at the vitamin D deficiency on a broader spectrum. Vitamin D deficiency is very common. In my practice, I routinely order vitamin D levels. In fact, I take vitamin D capsules myself. Vitamin D levels are generally low. 50% of the adults have been found to have low vitamin D levels. And it is more common among Hispanics and African American population. Let's look at some of the sources of vitamin D. If you are in sunlight 15 to 20 minutes per day, you should be able to generate vitamin D within your body. But most of us who are computer geeks, who are in an artificial light inside a building 12 hours a day and get no sunlight, and you move into a gym with artificial LED lights and still don't get any sunlight, you're not getting any vitamin D. Some of the sources of vitamin D are egg yolk, fish, cheese, and liver. Of course, today, if you take milk, dairy products, or juices, they are all fortified with vitamin D. The daily adult requirement of vitamin D is 600 units, and if you are over the age of 70, they recommend 800 units. So how do you get vitamin D? Vitamin D is available everywhere. You can go to any drugstore, you can get vitamin D. They come in different forms. It can come in like vitamin 3000 units, vitamin D, or 5000 units, or you can have a 50,000 units which you can take weekly. So just discuss with your primary care physician, have them check your vitamin D levels, and if your vitamin D levels are low, it is beneficial to take vitamin D, advice of your primary care physician. The National Institute of Health, NIH, here in the United States, and the World Health Organization claims there is real no correlation between the vitamin D levels or deficiency and COVID infection or its severity. So that's the standing of the NIH and the World Health Organization. But it's up to you. If you are having low vitamin D levels, you should consult with your primary care physician or your cardiologist and see if they recommend vitamin D3 as a supplement. Then you can buy this over the counter. You don't need a prescription. And that is the end of the story. And here are some references which are taken from Mayo Clinic website. If you are more interested in learning more about vitamin D3 and COVID-19 infection, you can look at those. Before I conclude my presentation, I would like you to take a look at the COVID-19 pandemic, an international guide by me, which is available on Amazon.com. This has been a presentation of Triple N Media COVID-19 World News. Please do subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you next time.